Welcome to Looking for the Ocean, where we watch everything Pixar ever made. That's features, short films, tech demos, and more. I'm Danny Vincent, and as always, I'm joined by Mark Young, and with us today is Gene.
Hello.
Gene, I think your name is easily the easiest to make a Wally sound out of.
Oh,
yeah,
dude.
because you didn't give their last name.
That's true. You got me. Gene Arnold.
Look at the doc.
What's in the doc?
I don't know. The Excel sheet has all the names and everything. Hey, Gene, how's it going?
I know Gene's last name. I just wanted to do a Wally voice. Get off my back.
So sorry. I feel like that laugh is gonna spike. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I
wanted to say real quick. When Wally was coming out, that was my bit going up to it. Was I don't know how many times I was the kid in class that was the best at saying Wally. Wow,
ooh, that was pretty good.
That is very good.
And I held on to that mantle for however many months before it was.
Should we all try to do our Wally voices? I don't think I'll be as good as Gene.
Yeah, sure. Let's all get shamed. All right.
Wally.
I think mine's very low, but Wally.
I think I can do that.
So, Gene,
I can do the
aside from your very special skill, what's there to know about you?
Who are you?
Well, like a lot of artists out in Los Angeles, I am a freelance filmmaker. Right now, I'm trying to get into post-production, which is a little tougher, but if anything has been taught to me about last year with a movie like the one that just won Best Picture, Everything Everywhere All at Once, the fact that their visual effects team never went to film school, and they created that whole movie with basically 5-6 people, and it just shows to me like all that matters is if you have the drive at the end of the day. That's sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, you're good. You know, we had a guest on for Ratatouille who also didn't all because we all went to film school, but he didn't go to film school and he's already made a feature film. So yeah, 100%. Like, also I'll be honest about SIU. I love it. It was a great time. There are definitely some gaps in our education there.
Film school, you didn't need it. You don't need it if you want to do it. Like, that's the thing, that's the beautiful thing about YouTube and the internet in particular, is that it's given like a lot of different like younger filmmakers, and TikTok too in a lot of ways has given like a lot of younger generations like the ability to create without needing to pay thousands of dollars to basically learn shit you can learn on the internet.
I can't wait for a TikTok episode.
So, Gene,
yes,
what are your Wally credentials? Because I know that Danny sends out lists to people when he wants them to come on, and they have some choices to make. What made you choose Wally?
It's so weird. Like, I love most of them. There's a few that, I don't really like to talk about. In particular, the
Cars 2.
I mean, listen, Cars 2. I just really hate that they wasted Michael Caine, but that's a whole other topic for another day. My top 3 in particular, in no specific order, is usually Toy Story 2, Coco, and Wall-E. They all have a very special place in my heart and everything, but I love Wall-E so much because he's a hopeless romantic like me in a lot of ways. And I just rewatched the movie today, so this is very fresh in my mind, but like it's such a big metaphor for like how I deal with life in general. There's just so much shit around you, and you just have to deal with that shit. I've seen Wall-E at least 9 or 10 times, I think. It's so delicately made, and the fact that it's only an hour and 36 minutes with so much going on is incredible to me.
I checked just because I love checking this with movies. It hits that credits, although you gotta watch the credits of this movie. I was saying that last week.
Yes.
You gotta watch the credits of this movie. But it hits those credits at pretty much exactly the 90-minute mark. Maybe like 90 minutes, 10 seconds.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what the Disney Plus thing says.
Oh, yeah,
that's what I'm quoting the hour.
Well, I didn't watch this on Disney Plus. I'll say what I watched this on when we get more to our main discussion. But
Fair.
How did you first encounter Pixar growing up?
Well, I am very lucky that my mother loved cinema. I remember seeing A Bug's Life in theaters. It's one of my first theatrical movie-going experiences. I love Toy Story. Dude, if you went to my childhood home, I have a whole box full of like just Toy Story toys and like Monsters Inc. toys, and like I think from Monsters Inc. all the way to Cars 2, I had seen every Pixar movie in theaters, usually opening day, if not opening weekend, because that's how much I love Pixar. It like moved me, and like there was something about it. There's just a lot of genuine like thought and creativity put into these films, and it's a big reason why I wanted to become a filmmaker, if I'm being really honest. Like just the way they told stories, just like, I mean, I don't want to be basic and just talk about how they, you know, it's a lot of human elements in these films, like a lot of like, you know, connective tissue to the human struggle, if you will. But yeah, like growing up, it was Wallace and Gromit, Toy Story, and I think there was another claymation show I watched. I forget.
Chicken Run?
But those Chicken Run,
Run's
yes,
around that
Chicken
time,
Run.
yeah.
I did love Chicken Run too. That was a great one. Oh, and Shrek, and of course Shrek. Shrek was my nanny for many, many years.
He's a bit of a scary nanny. He's like, got my soul.
He taught me how to live in the real world. If I'm being honest, like Shrek is important to kids. Like he teaches you that the world is cruel, and you can only find people you love and trust, and that's it.
I want to ask, because of what you said there, I want to ask a question that we don't ask a lot of guests, but do you remember some of your earliest live action movies that were important to you?
Hope Firehouse Dog is one of them.
I don't know. It's important, but in many of the wrong ways. But The Phantom Menace was the very first live action movie I saw in theaters. And God, I think I remember specifically, the only things I remember from that movie's going experience was the pod racing, and then when Anakin was in outer space. All I really remember was a little kid, because I was like, hey, that energy reminds me of me as a 4-year-old.
Well, Gene, we got to ask you this question that you're talking about Phantom Menace, because we got to see if we got to cancel you or not. What was your childhood take on Jar Jar Binks?
Well, that's...
We're not going to cancel you for
listen, here, listen.
Well, we won't cancel you, but we'll post this and let the people decide.
Here, listen, here's my thing on Jar Jar, all right? I feel really bad for the actor who played Jar Jar. I need to fully disclose that. Like, I think he got a really bad rap, because ultimately a lot of the blame should have gone to George Lucas, because he was the main writer on that film, and he put that character in all those positions.
Yes. Well, you know what? We are you gonna double back, Mark, or should I double back?
I can double back. I want to ask about Pixar. How do you think about when you think of the Pixar studio? What do you think of?
Okay.
How do you feel about it?
A couple things. As a kid, when I thought about it, I thought I'm about to be wowed. As an adult, when I see that logo, I think, I can't wait to watch the credits and see all the babies that were born during production. That's like my favorite thing now as an adult, watching all these Pixar movies. Because, like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard what happened on Toy Story 2. Which, by the way...
Well, they deleted the movie? I'm assuming you're going out?
Yeah, exactly. And, like, that alone could be its own movie. Like, if they ever wanted to do a movie about Pixar, I feel like that's the most interesting story, right?
Well... Funny thing you mentioned that we did an episode on the Pixar story, which is a documentary sanctioned by Pixar.
Right. Oh
it's a puff piece that advertises about how great they are.
But no, when I think Pixar, I think I'm ready to be usually wowed. The other thing I miss is the short films that we used to get during Pixar movies, like right before the movie started. I think they stopped recently.
Well, that was in the news this week because the new Pixar movie is going to have a short in front of it.
Oh, hallelujah. Thank God.
It is, it's Carl's Date, which is being marketed as the end of the Upiverse. Sorry, Mark, I stole your thing. You texted me the Upiverse.
I forgot about that. I thought you were just coming up with that now.
No, I just saw it, like, the discussing film Twitter. It goes, like, Carl's Date is designed to be the end of stories in the cinematic universe. And it's like, that's so dumb. There were just a couple short films. It's not a cinematic universe.
It's just like their way of saying Ed Asner died and we want to be respectful. Because that's ultimately why they have to and the Up universe, which, first of all, that's.
I mean, you can
There's
kill
Doug
Carl
is
off
right there.
screen.
Doug is right there.
You can kill Carl off screen and do a movie about Russell and Doug.
Russell all grown up, trying to find love. There you go.
Well, I was gonna say I saw the thing with because the premise of Carl's date is that Carl is going on his first date since Ellie died. Okay.
Yeah.
And I saw this tweet that went viral, which was like a quote tweet of the announcement, and going, Pixar has the opportunity to do the funniest fucking shit ever with this short. You guys don't even understand.
Oh, for real.
And I'm just like, there are so many options if we want to go funny. What do you guys think would be the funniest option for Carl's date?
I don't remember Up that well. Aren't there like no women in that movie?
I mean,
there's a dead wife.
There's Ellie.
Well, I'll tell you what
you're
I'll
right,
tell you what
though. There's not many women, though.
Well, let me tell you what my funniest answer is that he goes on a date, we don't know who the date is, and then the camera pans over and it's Russell's mom. That would be the most messed up funny thing.
That is a good one. Yeah.
That would be great.
I saw another funny tweet today, because Twitter's dying this week. I'm sure you guys all heard.
Again?
Dying every week.
I know. But I saw this tweet where it was like, this is the best joke the MCU has ever done. I'm like, all right, let's see it. I click it. And it's like the zoom in on Jake Gyllenhaal in the background in Spider-Man Far From Home. It's like, he's like, it was me the whole time. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's a good one.
That's not even true, because truly the best joke. It's funny because it's from that film. I think the best joke they've ever done is the opening of Far From Home.
Well, you don't like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, so that's why.
Well, I hate them, so yeah.
Wait, no, I think the funniest moment in the entire MCU, like, I hate to be like, this is factually true, but I do think this is factually true. Go. It's in Avengers 1 when Hulk smashes Loki.
Yeah,
that is pretty
I
funny.
suppose that has to be
it's definitely the most memorable, crowd-pleasing, funny moment. I would say that, because I remember seeing it in theaters. I don't think I've seen, like, at least in a Marvel movie, anybody laugh that hard. I think the funniest joke in a Marvel movie is in Ragnarok, where
Ragnarok has a lot of great jokes.
Where they have like they play dead. So he throws Loki, and he's like, "Oh my god, he's dead!" He just throws Loki.
I thought you were
going
to say...
that was the funniest joke.
When you mentioned dead Loki, I thought you were going to be like, I think the funniest joke in the MCU is the thing that I was in.
That's right. That's right.
Aren't you still NDA'd on that?
That bitch expired a while ago, I think. So, like, dude, that was like 2017, I think. No.
Yeah, probably.
No,
that movie came out in 18.
It came out in 18, but I filmed in January of that year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I was like really surprised. I was like, wait.
Yeah, I remember you said you thought it was for 4 at the time. I remember you saying it.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, originally. And I thought I was actually going to be fitted for another outfit. But then they're like, nope. We already got you for this one. Why would we get you for a new one? We'll just find somebody else. And I was like, oh.
So that's cool. It's a cool little story.
Hey, I got to meet Chris Hemsworth. He's a real cool dude. Dude, he is tall. That is my thing. Like, he is tall as shit. He's like 6'4", 6'5", I think. He's like,
I gotta say,
everybody. Go ahead.
Gene, you just led me into something that I needed to say the last episode. A while back on this show, I said something about an actor who's currently in the news for very, very bad reasons. And I said, I went to a question answer.
Jesus Christ. I thought we would avoid this.
No. I'm just saying it. We can move right on right after I say it. I went to a question answer with Jonathan Majors. I came on this podcast right after. I said to Mark, this guy is so nice. He's so cool. He's the nicest guy I've ever met. Mark was like, Danny, I don't think you should be saying these things about celebrities that you don't actually know. And I said, well, he seems so great. And right now he's in the news for reasons that we don't need to get into. I'm sure everyone listening has seen it. But I just want to apologize and say, Mark, you're right. I shouldn't go to a promotional event with celebrities and be like, wow, they were nice. Because that's fucking stupid. And you called it. And it's not a, congrats, you told me so. It's a fuck. I shouldn't have been like, shut up, Mark, back then. So.
Well, I don't remember calling you out on it. So I have no stake in this.
I gotta ask, one last thing to double back a bit on the Pixar questions, then we can go to introduce Wally. I always ask this question, and I usually ask it a little earlier, but I'm always curious, because unless you're like me, who has always fucking seen every Pixar movie, as soon as they can, I think everyone gets off the Pixar train for a bit, and then maybe finds their way back on. Do you think that ever happened for you? And if so, when? What movie do you think was like, all right, I'm off for now?
I feel cliched saying it. It was Cars 2. Cars 2 pissed me the fuck off. I was so upset. I was so mad. I was so betrayed because Toy Story 3, like, you go from Toy Story 3 to Cars 2, it's just such a huge drop off. And then
it really is.
And, like, Danny, I know you like Cars 2, and I don't want to rip it because, like, I know you like Cars 2, but
I like Cars 2, but it's still like bottom 7 Pixar. So
like for me, it's like Cars 2, Brave. It's got a lot of potential, but man, it's just I really don't know why they chose that storyline after the magic spell. It just sort of became a weird, like, why did they remake Brother Bear?
Mother Bear.
They should have just called it that. Then it would have, I don't know, I would have been fine with it. Like,
they should have made it about her turning into a horse, and that could be Mother Mare. There we go. Disney, give me $600 million. Mark, ask your question.
Have you seen Turning Red?
I have. I saw it opening. I saw it when it aired on Disney Plus, and I can't wait to watch it again. I love that movie so much. I actually bought it on Blu-ray. That's how much I loved it.
Did you watch it when Danny came into town and get the theatrical experience, or did you just watch it online?
I watched it online. As much as I wanted to see it in theaters, I was sort of like, well, my partner really wanted to watch it, so I was sort of like, all right, well, I watch it now.
I feel like pointing out also the thing about Turning Red in theaters when I visited, is unless you're like me and you see like a movie in theaters like 2 or 3 a week, I think it was pretty hard to justify seeing that one in theaters when the Batman came out like a couple days prior. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. I feel like the Batman was a bigger priority for most people, because I think you had seen. I think that was literally what you told me. It was like, I just saw the Batman and I can't really do another movie right now, which is very valid.
So, Danny, we are all here to talk about Wall-E. This is an incredible film, and could you give us a little bit of the background about it?
All right, Wall-E. This is the time where I would do the groundbreaker bit, but I feel like, and this might be tipping my hand on my take too much before I get into the actual backstory, Wall-E is such a singular film in this studio to me that it feels, calling it a groundbreaker feels a little unfair, because to me it's its own. Talking about it as a Pixar movie feels weird, because it feels like its own movie with the exception of a couple things. It's just completely different. Even as someone, we did an entire episode on Ratatouille and how much we love Ratatouille. Wall-E to me feels so much like a singular experience that it is hard to quantify how it stands within Pixar. That said, I'm going to try. Wall-E, Andrew Stanton's follow-up to Finding Nemo. I've talked about the teaser trailer on this podcast before. We're going to do it again. Wall-E's marketing begins in front of Ratatouille, where unlike every other Pixar movie that gets a teaser trailer that's a gag short, this trailer is introduced by John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, and Pete Docter, all in black and white, saying, we worked on this, we had a lunch in like 1993 or 4 where we came up with a bunch of ideas for movies. We've gone through them all except for this one. Get ready, guys, next summer. And it's just a clip of Wall-E making some trash. And it's like, okay, interesting. Wall-E is hard sci-fi. Wall-E is, I would say Wall-E thematically is and Gene, you might disagree because I know you're not as big on this movie as I am. I think you're closer to Mark. I think the closest movie Wall-E is thematically to anything we've covered on this podcast is Avatar: The Way of Water. Just because of how hard sci-fi it gets and how, not necessarily emotional. Emotional is, it's more in common with other Pixar movies, definitely. But, and how heady it gets. But, anyway. The 9th movie made at Pixar comes out in June. It's Andrew Stanton's follow-up to Finding Nemo. It's just really, it's a movie that's hard to talk about again. But I think it's more interesting to talk about. let's talk about how it did. Because talking about how it's made, it might come up naturally during this. But I would say WALL-E, this is what I always talk about with WALL-E. I was talking to a coworker actually today about this movie, okay? WALL-E, one of its biggest lasting impacts is that WALL-E and The Dark Knight are the two main reasons that the Oscars have not had 5 Best Picture nominees since 2008. Because there was so much uproar over both WALL-E and The Dark Knight not getting into a Best Picture lineup that it is credited as the main reason Up got a nomination the following year, I believe, personally. Even though Up did have a very positive contemporaneous response, but I think now people are kind of like, it's good. Maybe Mark disagrees. We'll find out if people disagree.
Yeah, I won't really know until we rewatch Up, because I don't remember loving it, but then I watched WALL-E, remembering not loving it, and I loved it.
Okay, WALL-E makes so much money. It makes $500 million worldwide, which feels weird on paper, but then you realize this story translates so easily, because there's not a lot of dialogue for the first half of it, and in the back half of it, it's very archetypical in a good sense. It obviously wins Best Animated Feature. It loses all of its other nominations at the Oscars, which is insane to me, because as much as I like The Dark Knight, did it need both sound awards when WALL-E exists as a sound movie? I disagree.
A correction here. Danny wanted me to mention that The Dark Knight did not win both sound awards. Slumdog Millionaire won Best Sound Mixing. The Dark Knight won Best Sound Editing. And then Danny thinks that he remembered The Dark Knight won 2 awards, but the second award The Dark Knight won was the acting award for Heath Ledger. So there.
It's considered one of the greatest animated movies ever made. It was top Times list as the best movies of the decade in 2011 or 2010, whenever they did it. In 2016, it was voted the 29th best film of the 21st century, I believe, in the BBC poll. It is the second Pixar movie, and so far the only Pixar movie besides Toy Story, to be in the Library of Congress. It is the only Pixar movie to be in the Criterion Collection.
Oh my gosh, he's got it in front of us.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This is how I watched it. There was a Criterion flash sale. I picked it up because I'm like, it'll be good for the bit to have it. But also, like, I lost my copy a long time back of WALL-E, so it's like I can upgrade.
Can you hold it up again?
Yeah, it is a groundbreaking movie for so many reasons that, in a way, I do think talking about something in the context of a Pixar movie is doing it a disservice, which is saying so fucking much, considering how Pixar is so influential. This is a singular... I was talking to someone at work today about it too, and I was like... Well, I'll get to my points I was making later on when we're in our main discussion, but I made a joke about robots, like, the Blue Sky movie, and my friend was like, I haven't seen that since I was a child, so I have no actual opinion on it. But I was like, robots, even if it is good or bad, because I have no real opinion on it, but robots might be a good kids movie. It might be a good animated movie. But WALL-E is like one of the great movies that you cannot really even compare the two.
Yeah. It's amazing that this is Andrew Stanton both times. I thought this was a Pete Docter film until I realized I was just incorrect about that. Although I know he did do the
this
story.
is an Andrew Stanton movie. And I'll get into it. Why? But go on. Sorry, what were you going to say, Mark?
Yeah, well, I mean, upon watching it, I'm like, okay, I get why this is an Andrew Stanton movie. But, man... Two bangers. These might be at the end of our run, my number 1 and number 2, because I think we're about to hit the part where I'll feel a little more middling about the mainline Pixar movies. But yeah.
Sorry, the way you said that made me like Mark's gonna go to bat for Planes 2.
Well, yes, except for, of course, for Planes 2. I definitely have not always felt this way. I feel like I've seen WALL-E maybe like once before, and I don't really remember when. I think it was on DVD or something like that. But I remember not liking WALL-E because I thought it was so dark. And now I watched it.
That's good. That's an asset. Go on,
yeah,
sorry.
Well, it's... We can get into that later. But watching it today, I was like... It is like you said. It's like you forget you're watching a Pixar movie. And even when it kind of becomes a Pixar movie... In the last half, there are still moments, like when they're flying in space or something, you kind of forget you're on the Pixar train. It's really hard to imagine cars lingering on shots of the like desert as much as this, and even though it does, as much as Wall-E seems to really like stop, it feels that way, even though that's, if you were to analyze it, that's not what's happening. But yeah, just an incredible film, unlike any we've seen before on this podcast, except maybe Avatar 2, The Way of Water, the other hard sci-fi. I'm sorry about that, because I actually agree with that take, but that just sets something off in me. It's weird, if you know anything about like sci-fi awards, the Hugo and the Nebula Awards and stuff like that. So these are literary awards, and they are given out each year to sci-fi products. And, they've done like books for a long time. Dune was the first book that won both Hugo and the Nebula Awards. And I'm mentioning both of these because if you look at which books have won like both of those awards through the years, they're usually like the touchstone sci-fi classics. But every year I think maybe it's the Hugo Awards, whichever one has the film category, but the film category for best sci-fi movie basically goes out to the sci-fi movie that came out that year. And they are vastly inferior to books tackling the same topic. So I don't want to hate on sci-fi things, but I was just like, yes, Avatar 2 is great. I think Avatar 2 is great because it was close to what we like about like hard sci-fi literature. And then it took those ideas and let Stephen Lang play around with them. And that's why Avatar 2 is something special on its own. But I'm sorry, that's kind of a tangent.
I will ask you your take, not on Avatar 2, unless you really want to give it, but on Wall-E.
Can I? Oh, wait, go ahead.
I want to wrap up one last part of our intro, because I did forget, to me, something that is kind of groundbreaking in the whole landscape of cinema and animation with this movie. And there's other stuff, too. This is the most expensive animated movie of all time up to that point. It cost $180 million. That's not what I'm going to say. Although I did say it, but that's not what I meant. You know what I mean. This is Roger Deakins, legendary cinematographer, first entry in visual consultancy for animation. He did it 2 other times. I want to pop quiz you guys. Can you remember the other 2 times? This is the only Pixar movie. The other 2 aren't Pixar movies.
Can I remember, or is it that I will have to guess? Because I don't think I actually know.
I think you'd have to guess. I will say that these are all like... He did them all in pretty rapid succession. So these are all around Wall-E's release. I think the latest one is 4 or 5 years later than Wall-E. But there's 2 of them.
Was Rango one of them?
Yeah, Rango's the latest one.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get this. Nothing's popping into my brain, but I know where you're going with this. I just cannot think of another animated film that had that look.
I'm going to guess How to Train Your Dragon.
Yep, that's it. You got them both.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Both of them are consulted by Deakins, which I think shows in both films. And in this too, because that's the other thing too, is like you watch this, you can tell they contacted a cinematographer to give some ideas here. It is absolute, because I was thinking, because we watched Ratatouille recently, and it has the same like wide scope of a Pixar movie, and it's not that Ratatouille has bad cinematography, it frequently looks quite good, but it's not like Wall-E where it's like this giant sweeping vista that like is mind-blowing.
I mean, they're 2 different movies. In a lot of ways, like especially the first 30 minutes of Wall-E, which essentially plays like a silent film for the most part, because there's no dialogue, if any, at all, other than Wall-E's little creaks and sounds and whatnot. Actually, I don't know about 30 minutes, maybe more like 20. First 20.
No, actually, minutes. I think you are. Is it
30?
I checked when he was holding on the spaceship. I think it was at 33 minutes.
Okay.
So that's when I think he was hanging off that ship and by Saturn.
Because that's the thing about like having rewatched it. Like I'm thinking about all those like giant like shots of like the trash buildings and everything, and just the earth and whatnot. And obviously Ratatouille it's weird because it's not really like I don't want to say it's not world building, but Wall-E's doing way more world building. Like when it first starts out and everything, like the minute you get to it. Whereas Ratatouille's more character driven, in my opinion, versus Wall-E. Wall-E's fantastic. I mean, I also love the fact that it's clearly inspired by 2001, A Space Odyssey, and they don't make it very obvious until like the last 20 minutes. Like when they started playing that song and the music and the movie, I was like, God damn it, he's doing his supposed to.
Yeah, I we can talk about the third act here eventually, but I don't necessarily want to, because that's where I'm most.
Sure.
The big set piece, not obviously the actual ending of the movie on Earth, but like the big set piece is probably where I'm the most negative towards the movie. But even then, I'm kind of like,
yeah,
it's basically during that sequence when it focuses on Eve and Wally. I still really like. I'm like, this is fantastic still.
Mm-hmm.
But
a movie it really reminded me of too was Brazil. I don't know if you guys have seen Brazil.
The first trailer for this movie was set to Brazil.
I know the first trailer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was set to that and everything.
Sorry, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like I had never seen Brazil before. I think I saw it like 3 years ago. I think I saw it in 2020, and having seen that and now rewatched Wall-E, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Brazil is a real blind spot for me. I need to watch Brazil. Have you seen Brazil, Mark?
Yeah. It's been a very long time, and I don't always connect with Terry Gilliam films. I feel like I liked it, but I mean, I don't know. It's probably like Wall-E, something that I watched a long time ago and then would rewatch and appreciate it much more.
Yeah, for me, like, the thing I love so much about how Wall-E starts, especially the way he treats the little cockroach and everything, just his kindness. Like, there's such a dark, like you said, just a dark, horrible world, and he's literally piling trash into himself and creating trash boxes and whatnot, and he's just like the most optimistic, like, little guy, and like it's so refreshing. And
what I find so interesting about Wall-E as a movie, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up first, is because this is the last time I will compare it to Avatar 2. I promise.
I don't mind if you do. That just awoke something in me.
In a way, no. I'm going to repeat the point we made about Avatar 2 on this podcast, and then relate it to Wall-E, is that I think Mark and I agree that one of the coolest parts, if not the coolest part of Avatar 2, is the stuff of Korich, where it's like, he is a clone who insists, like, I'm not actually related to you, I'm a clone of you. And it, like, gets into all this, like, existential questions about being a clone, like, realistically. This came to my mind when I was watching Wall-E, because what I find so great about this movie, and I also think about this, Mark, when you mentioned Cars, and it's like, it's not like Cars, it's not like a Bug's Life. These aren't robots doing human things. These are robots. This movie never breaks the reality that Wall-E is the way he is because he has been 700 years alone, so he's probably a little glitchy in programming, but that's okay because that's what his personality comes from. Eve, the way I view this movie is the way these robots change and interact are because they are programmed to interact this way with humans, so humans aren't repulsed by them. Mm-hmm. I don't think the movie ever breaks from that idea, even though it's never outright said. These are 100% robots. These are never human, like, these are not anthropomorphized at all. They are definitely robots that are trying to compute, like, what is romance from watching this movie? What does it mean to be with someone? Yeah. What does, like, and that, Otto being, and that's why Otto and Wall-E are so interesting, because, you know, at the end, Wall-E reboots and we see what he was like originally, and then we see the video of the previous Wall-E's, because Otto is an old system too. And Otto and Wall-E are when Wall-E isn't glitching, you know, when Wall-E isn't the Wall-E we know and love, they are rigid robots like how we expect automation to be. And it's only the more recent robots that are seen in the movie that are programmed to interact with humans. I think this movie is such a brilliant work of sci-fi and brilliancy, because Wall-E and Eve are very human characters, but they're also never not robots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this movie so powerful and emotional, that we get to see them come together, because the future of humanity is in something that we created. Like, that that is like the core of like this film in a way, talking about thematically to me.
Yeah. I think that is the most exciting part of the film for me, is when Wall-E changes back to his original programming. Like, it doesn't last very long. It's so devastating, but they wisely, they can do whatever they want, but it's like, it's funny after the climax, which you said is like so goofy, and you're like, all right, Pixar, you can have this as the high point of your movie. Let's just go back to Earth and then end the movie, but then they don't, and then it's like, all right, here's this thing. That was so good.
Because at the very end, it reminds you, these were robots who cared about this entire fucking movie. Get over it. And it's like, no, but it's like, I already said it, because I was like my big thought while watching it. I was so proud of it, but it's like, this is about it's not a creation myth, but it is about how we created something that at first ruined us, but then eventually came to save us. And it's, WALL-E is Jesus, basically. Robot Jesus. But, because that's a little too, what's the word for it?
On the nose.
I don't, what?
Too on the nose? Is that
Not
the
even on the
expression?
nose. I think I'm making it too simple. Because to say WALL-E is a Christ figure is silly, because what makes him cool is that he is not. He is a very flawed robot.
Yeah.
He's a bit clingy, but why wouldn't you be after 700 years alone?
Yeah, he's essentially the last of them, too. So, like, it's not like he was chosen. Like, he's just, like, a survivor. But, yeah, no, you're absolutely on it with the whole... Especially when he gets reset and everything. As a viewer, you know, when I was crying in that moment, and I was like, God damn it, come back, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized that that's the point, is that these robots are robots. These are not... Yes, WALL-E wants to hold her hand, but it's not because he's a human, or a human character, if you will. It's because that's what he thinks will get the romance connect. Like, because he's, like you said, he's trying to understand romance, and he's been alone for 700 years. Or... I don't know if he was alone. That was an entire 700
Probably
years.
600. Probably more like...
Because, like, you see those old dead bodies or those worn out robots, you know, where he takes those treads from at one point in the movie. So it's clear, like...
I love that the movie opens with that.
Yeah.
Him basically, like, stealing from a corpse. Because, you know, in most animated movies, like, these robots would just be, like, characters. And in that sense, it's like, our main character is stealing a corpse of something from the corpse of his brother to survive, you know?
Yeah.
Like...
No, yeah, absolutely. And I love just, like, the waking up scene where he has to recharge his batteries and everything. I know it's very...
Get the little Mac
sound. The little Mac sound, that's right. Bing. Which also I love because, you know, shout out Steve Jobs, founded Pixar, if I'm not mistaken. It has to be an ode to that, I would imagine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, Otto is voiced by the Macintalk
that's right.
program they had at the time, which is a good idea, honestly. It works really well.
Yeah.
Gene, you're so right about that he only wants to hold her hand because that is how he has been taught to show affection.
Yeah.
I think it's very smart of the movie. So not only are we always clear about what he is doing when he's, you know, wanting to hold her hand, we can also see it as, you know, Danny, like you said, him being flawed. It's all justified and part of the experience of them being robots.
What I was going to say about WALL-E is also the thing that to me is really key is, like, imagine if we came on this podcast and our entire talking point was like, is WALL-E an incel? But, like, obviously that's not what we're going to talk about, because WALL-E is a robot. And what I think is fascinating about that also is, like, maybe it fits into some 2000s romance tropes, but to me, that moment where Eve realizes how much WALL-E loves her and is like, she's like, you know, the captain's looking at her memory logs or whatever, and she sees that WALL-E was waiting with her the entire time.
The whole umbrella sequence and everything.
It's not that, like, for a human to be like, that's weird that he, like, cared so much about me when he barely know me. But the fact is, for a robot, it's like, what even is the idea of caring for someone besides your directive? Like, why would you even think to care? Like, what is caring for someone else? Like, that is not something Eve's been introduced to. And so in that sequence where she sees that, it's like, that's where I got emotional this time, because I never really made that connection. Because that's really where my whole mind this entire watch was like, damn, these are robots.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's very tropey. I mean tropey in, like, the bad way. I know you're comparing this to films that do that in, I think we'd all agree, like, the wrong way or whatever. But no, I don't think that it is unmotivated that she falls in love with him after he cares for her, you know, in all that way. And then she also doesn't realize it until she looks through the security footage. It's just another very well written moment.
In those sequences when WALL-E's taking care of her, you know, there's I literally had to ask myself, like, man, like, is this, I'm not trying to frame this as creepy, but, like, you know what I mean? But, like, that's instinctual. Like, I don't think, like, he's, like... Because, like, most of the time, those characters, they're out for sex, usually. And that's all they care about. And WALL-E is clearly a robot. He does not care about those human experiences and whatnot. All he cares about is, like, this new person has come, and he showed her this plant, that he was so like happy to find. I mean, I remember when he found that, he was just like so joyed, and then being like, oh no, I broke her, and thinking like he has to fix it and everything, which is ultimately what he does.
What I think is really also important about WALL-E, even though all this applies to the romance, is that it's beyond the romance too.
Sure.
Because there's a moment in this movie that really stood out to me also on this watch, which is the introduction of Mary, where WALL-E like gets her off her computer or whatever, and like just taps like Eva, like he needs to get by, and that is bizarre to her for a lot of reasons. One, her TV got off, but I just thought like all these robots in this movie, unless they're like glitching in that glitchy area where we don't really see those glitching robots interact with humans, stay exactly where they are in their lane to their programming. So even if she like, she doesn't know what WALL-E is. She doesn't know he's a trash compactor robot. But normally, any robot in this world would just wait and stop until she moves to get to where he needs to go. So the idea of meeting a robot that is impatient, like, is like, to her too. And it's like that's the whole thing too with the human stuff, which I know people are mixed on. We can get into it down the road. But Mark, I know you had something you wanted to mention, about the Macintalk. I think it is about learning to care, and how since there is a robot cares about someone and cares about each other, and he meets all these new people, either other robots or other humans, and it's like he still only cares about Eve. Yeah. And that in and of itself is so powerful, but also like to the other people there who don't care about each other either, that's powerful too. It's like, what do you mean that this robot cares? What do you mean that somebody cares? It doesn't even matter that it's a robot, that it's somebody.
Yeah.
But Mark,
what are you going to say about Macintalk?
Oh, well, not even about Macintalk. I was thinking about watching it now. The part of the appeal of WALL-E comes from how of its time it is. So I think we accept some of the sci-fi extrapolations a little easier because of the world that WALL-E lives in is, 700 years in the future, but it is definitely rooted in 2008. Like, he's got an iPod Nano and the corporation...
A VHS tape. A VHS tape.
Yeah, and a VHS tape, and the corporation is modeled after Walmart and not Amazon. Right. It is like, it's this view of the world that you can go back and understand pretty well, so you understand the concepts moving forward. They could have or couldn't have predicted that everything would be done online now, but I think that we're still thinking about what the impacts of those things are and what that would look like, versus if you go back to 2008, you're like, all right, Walmart is evil and there's trash everywhere. Where now I don't think, we think like that. We think like there's this kind of unknowable, vague evil out in the world that is like pervasive and strange, and no one knows where garbage goes at all.
I definitely think this was made today. Well, I'm going to refer to an essay by a professor that I think all three of us had. Maybe not all of us three had. He had this... He had all these whack opinions, But I remember his whack opinion on WALL-E was... One of his was, I love the ending of this movie because all the humans die out during the credits, because the last thing you see is just WALL-E and Eve staring at a tree, and now robots have inherited the Earth because they're the real humans. And
what?
I don't think this movie is saying that at all. I don't get how you read that.
Doesn't the movie say, go out of its way to say the opposite?
Yeah, I would agree, but we had it with these... Anyway, but what I was going to say about WALL-E is I think that if it was made today, that is how it would end. Yeah. I think we would say humans are a lost cause, but maybe these robots can be our saving grace, and they could be our legacy, and they are just the next stage of human evolution, rather than being people who help us find ourselves again.
Yeah.
But I think if it was made today, it would have that more nihilistic view inherently, where it's like, WALL-E inherits the Earth,
Yeah.
I feel like it wouldn't have, I just feel like it wouldn't have been as good of a movie also if it had come out today versus when it did. In many ways, I just feel like you're right. They would shape a lot of different things based on the way our world is.
I was going to say, it also reminds me of 2 years prior release, Children of Men. Two movies that to me that are, I don't know Mark's opinion on Children. I'm really worried I'm not like getting into one of those things where Mark hates something that I like a lot.
Well, surprise. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, but my point is, Children of Men, I saw it for the first time literally the weekend before the election 2020. Because they were showing it at the Music Box with V for Vendetta, which was a very funny, like, double feature of, like, 2000, or, like, 2005, 2006. Haha, look at the world we're in now type of movies. But I think, to me, Mark, we don't need to get into why you dislike Children of Men, but I think both these movies are, to me, WALL-E and Children of Men are both 5 out of 5 movies. And I think they both are movies that are rooted in the time they came out. And yet, to me, they still, because of how rooted they are in the time they came out, they still feel remarkably, like, both prescient and with such a all-encompassing worldview of what that movie, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, such a well-thought-out sci-fi world for both of them that I would program the two of them, like, as a double feature. Honestly, like, you know, like, these are movies that complement each other. WALL-E's the more optimistic one. Children of Men is the sadder one that still is optimistic.
Yeah.
I think they hit a lot of the same notes. Well, I do think WALL-E's probably a bit better, but they're both really great.
I did talk about V for Vendetta on another podcast recently, which might not be out yet by the time this episode comes out, but that too, the original comic was written like in the 80s. And it's the same thing. I feel like it just really helps your digestion of the concepts going forward. If you're just like, all right, everything got nuked except for Britain because of something that happened in the 80s. Now we can talk about other things, you know.
It is kind of weird that Children of Men and V for Vendetta kind of have this whole, like, Britain is the world thing to them, but...
Yeah, I mean, I need to rewatch Children of Men. My problem with Children of Men is, you know, it has nothing.
I don't think you like. You don't like those showy long takes. I'm guessing that's my assumption. Maybe I'm wrong.
I remember I didn't like Michael Caine's character because I didn't know why he mattered, but I don't remember why. Like, it's been that long, but that's not important. Anyway, back to WALL-E. That was my thought. Is just I'm glad that they set air quotes the movie in 2008. How do we feel about the people? Because I feel like that is the big sticking point for a lot of viewers of WALL-E. My
biggest issue with the movie, I can tell you my absolute one part of the movie that I hate. In the third act, big action climax, where WALL-E's like crushed under it, and we cut back to the woman going, "WALL-E, no!" And I'm just like, what? Eve is enough. You know what I mean? Like, what is it? Why do all these people care about, like, it's not even just her, because she at least met WALL-E. It's like everyone going, oh no, WALL-E. It's like, what are you guys talking about? Yeah, none of you met this guy. He's just been the wanted poster.
If anything, that one character, John, I think he was voiced by John Ratzenberger, actually, too. He's the only human that actually interacts with WALL-E. So if that moment,
Mary interacts too, very briefly.
I mean, very briefly, but he has a whole ass. Oh, I mean, that's true too. I mean, she did move for him, but I don't know. I feel like you're right though. Like, they didn't need that. I felt like it was more impactful if it came from him, but whatever.
Also, the thing about the humans is we can get into the whole thing of them, but in the third act, we keep cutting back to them for these jokes that it doesn't. I feel like the movie's nervous that it's getting too serious. So we cut back to these humans to be like, looks like we gotta have some kids. And it's like, or maybe you guys like it. Personally, to me, I don't dig the 2001 song quoting. It really takes me out of it now as an adult. It feels like a cheap gag. It feels like a cheap gag.
I would agree. It's sort of like, I already know this is inspired by 2001. I don't need you to literally tell me.
I will say, as someone who recently ran a bracket at his job where the Boss Baby won, I do finally understand, like, people said these look like humans evolved into babies. Because as soon as I did that, I looked at Mary and I was like, oh, damn, yeah, she does look exactly like one of the babies from the Boss Baby. And so does John. They both look... Their design is... Maybe the Boss Baby... Obviously, the Boss Baby came out, like, 9 years later. But you know what I mean? Like, very similar... It's how the babies are designed in that movie. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the Boss Baby is this crazy stylistic thing. It is a DreamWorks standard animated movie. Yeah. At least in terms of character design. So to me, I'm like, I finally did get and I mentioned that because that's the only way to me the 2001 joke works, because it's baby's first steps.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I don't think the movie really makes the connection to them looking like babies other than me now. Because the fact that it took till 2023 to finally get the, like, they look like babies take, that to me means I don't think the movie goes that hard on them being infantile babies. Like, they're immature, but are they infants? I don't really think so. Especially because we see actual babies in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing, I agree with all of that. And what saves that for me on the rewatch is that those moments pass very quickly. And I actually am much more positive about the humans now because I think I'm picking up more on how the writers tried to make them very sympathetic. And even though there are a lot of jokes about them being bad customers to the robots, I think that John and Mary are, like, way more charming than I remember them being. And the captain is very interesting, and just the dialogue altogether, like, there's so little exposition in this film that could have so much of it, and certainly the captain has exposition, but it seems
the captain has the captain to me has a line in this movie that always gives me chills, and it's, I think, one of this movie's, like, more minor influences because I've seen so much shit that's ripped. I'm sure this line's existed before, but this is where I feel like I first saw it. And it's the "I don't want to survive, I want to live" moment. And whenever he says it, that gives me like, well, I know it's in 12 Years a Slave, so I'm like, is that in the original book of 12 Years a Slave, or did the people writing 12 Years a Slave take that? But even if it is in something, I think the way it is used here is such, like, a great, like it always gives me chills.
It's very impactful. It's earned.
Yeah,
because
well. It does seem when I type that in, it does say quote by Solomon Northup. So maybe that's the original usage.
I mean, very possible, but I do think it's used well here.
Yeah.
So, and it's used well in 12 Years a Slave too. Even though I haven't seen 12 Years a Slave since it came out, but I remember that it's just a good line in general if you know how to deploy it and not have it feel generic. You know?
Yeah, it have a lot of weight to it too, because that can easily be, like, played for, you know. It's like, I don't want to survive, I want to live. It's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
You fucking cornball. Like, come on, man.
And I feel like this movie constantly, like, is in... I say with John and Mary, it does actually go there. But I think with the captain, you feel like whenever you start the movie, you feel like maybe this captain stuff's going to be in danger of, like, going too broad. But then you watch it, it's like, no, most of the captain stuff is like, yes, he has a couple funny bits here and there, but they're like... funny Star Trek bits. You know what I mean? Like, they're bits that would be funny in any form of sci-fi. It's not like other than, of course, the 2001 joke. Because even the, like, I want to grow a pizza, it's delivered so earnestly that it's not even really funny to me. Like, I mean, it does give me, like, a light smile, but it's not like, it's like, yeah, of course you'd want to grow pizza. Like, if you didn't know how pizza existed.
Yeah.
I will say, if we're going to talk about, and although, Mark, I don't think this is what you meant when you said talk about the humans, but I do think when we talk about humans in this movie, we have to talk about Fred Willard, who I remember when he passed. I remember when he passed away, and I read a tweet that was so perfectly, like, obituating him. It's like, Pixar, the one man so animated that when he was in a Pixar movie, they just shot him and put him in. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. It's like the perfect Fred Willard role.
I hate to be like, Fred Willard obviously he's been in those Christopher Guest movies I haven't seen that are beloved, but I do think that 100 years down the road, this role will weirdly be his enduring legacy.
I do think that out of all the movies of his I've seen, and there has only been one, the one that I've seen will be the most remembered Fred Willard.
No, I've seen Anchorman. He's really good at Anchorman. Okay. And I've seen Spinal Tap, which is a type of movie. And I've seen him in so much TV, obviously. Although we're not talking TV, but I've seen him in a lot of TV. Fred Willard is such a prolific actor. I feel like everyone's seen him in at least 10 projects.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see his face, I always think about that sketch he did on the show I Think You Should Leave on Netflix.
I still need to watch it.
It's so good. It's the funniest show on TV, in my opinion. But it's...
I always see the hot dog meme.
But there's this whole bit where he's, like, at a funeral, and he brings this, like... I'm not going to do it justice. You just have to watch it. It's really great. It's really Fred Willard, like... But yeah, like, honestly, like, nobody else could have played the president. Or the CEO. I think he was the CEO or something. I don't know exactly.
It's the presidency. It's President Avert, the CEO, by and large.
Yeah. Like, I really had to think about it. I don't think there's anybody else that could have played that role.
I really don't think so.
I really don't think so.
Because anyone else would... the thing about Fred Willard is he has this persona that is this weird alchemy that makes him perfect to be a live action character in a cartoon. And very specifically, not like Bob Hoskins and Roger Rabbit, who is obviously one, to me, Bob Hoskins and Roger Rabbit, probably top 20 performance of all time. But I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about how he fits right in, and I don't ever think isn't it weird that this past stuff is this and now it's a cartoon? No, he completely fits in with the vibe of them. If anything, he is the most cartoony performance in the film.
I would agree with that.
Which is why it works, but he's also cartoony in a way that he's riffing a little bit off Steve Jobs. Now it feels like he's riffing off the Zuck and Elon Musk. It is a timeless CEO big shot. In a way, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna bring Marvel in here. I think Sam Rockwell saw this movie, and that gave us the best part of Iron Man 2. He's like, I want to be Fred Willard and Wally.
Yeah, just another thing you couldn't do now. You couldn't have that character now because he's actually lived the life of Trump, but then you couldn't play him that way,
Exactly. It's like when I watched the Lego movie right after the election, because that used to be of 2016, because that used to be a comfort movie for me. But then the Lego movie is all about president business, and it's this is too close to call. Not too close. Too close for comfort now. But then you watch Wall-E, and it's nah, this is completely its own thing. There's nothing about, because you're right now. Even probably when Lego movies coming out, because Trump obviously has been around for forever. Usually you do see it's outright parodying someone. In this movie, it's just a CEO, it's Fred Willard as a rich CEO, which works.
He reminds me of those ads that are selling, sometimes it's you're not sure if they
Richard Karn? Are you not Richard Karn? Billy Mays. Is it Billy Mays you're thinking of? Because that's kind of the vibe I get.
Well, Billy Mays is the vibe, but I'm thinking of commercials where they either try to sell you gold or get you to
cash for gold.
Sell them something. Yeah. Have you seen who's the boxer guy that's selling gold or something? Didn't MC Hammer do a gold advertisement? Never mind. Billy Mays is a better example.
I know I said I wouldn't bring it up again, but just a side note, because we're on the cast, is I kept making the Avatar 2 references, and I somehow never mentioned Sigourney Weaver's in both of them. Playing very weird roles in both of them. It's very weird Sigourney Weaver has this role in this movie. Not that it's she's Sigourney Weaver,
Yeah,
I
think she's great. It's just you don't
she's
really notice it because it's
the one who's dancing. This is an act where you fall in love.
I see. I can hear it now. Now
it's actually interesting because down the road in Finding Dory, she kind of reprises the role. Oh. Because she's the voice of the aquarium in Finding Dory. The PA announcements in Finding Dory, which is a fun little role for her too there.
Lol.
Andrew Stanton just likes her being the narrator of his life, I guess.
Did Andrew Stanton direct Finding Dory? What's his next movie besides John Carter?
It's Finding Dory. John Carter put him in director jail.
Oh.
John Carter was such a big, massive bomb.
Wow.
Well,
he's got a new movie in development. I'm very excited. He has a Fox Searchlight movie that apparently costs $100 million.
Well, actually, it's, unfortunately, Danny, it's no longer a Fox Searchlight. It's
you're right. It's just
Searchlight now.
But a Searchlight movie that costs $100 million we're giving to him? Hell yeah! How many people can have such a I guess Finding Dory made so much fucking money that it's allowed, but you know what I mean?
I'm kind of excited about John Carpenter now. We've talked about it so much, and I want to see the movie that puts someone in director jail after they directed Wall-E.
Well, also, we have two director jail movies. We have John Carter and we have Tomorrowland. Those are both director movies that put people in director jail.
Brad Bird.
He went to director jail. He had to make Incredibles 2 after to get out.
I know. I have to say this about John Carter real quick. John Carter, for me personally, I told my brother that he should take his friends to go see it opening weekend. My brother has never let me live that down, that his friends remind him whenever he brings up any movie decision. He's like, yeah, but you're the one who told us to go see John Carter. And I have forever been known as, hey, your brother recommended John Carter, and I was like, I just thought it had a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought you kids would like it.
No.
Am I in a Cars 2 style embargo with John Carter, or could I watch it?
I mean, we're actually pretty close to it. At this point, I would just say don't bother, because we're pretty close to it.
But I like
it's up
watching
to you.
these
I don't
things
really care if you
twice.
watch John Carter, because no matter what, I'll be the person going into John Carter having not seen it. My question is, will you really want to rewatch John Carter closer to the date? But what I was going to say, gee, because we've actually talked about this TED Talk before on this podcast, but you were shown the Andrew Stanton TED Talk in college, right? Like I was.
Yeah. I think I was, yeah.
The funniest thing about that TED Talk, which I'm sure I'll bring up one last time when we get to John Carter, is because it was tied into marketing for John Carter, and it's like Andrew Stanton's talking about like the great decision. I guess I should have looked that up again to see what his scene he talked about in Wall-E was, but because I haven't watched that in years and I can't remember. But in John Carter, he's like, this is the first scene of the movie, and we knew it had established so much stuff, and it's like, you can tell watching the scene, it's like, that really didn't help me at all. Like, that's not a good scene. Like, but then he shows scenes from Wall-E and Finding Nemo, and you're like, oh, what was I going to say with this movie? I was going to say this.
Oh, real quick.
I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about this movie still, obviously, but...
real quick, I just wanted to say the name of the next Andrew Stanton movie. It's called In the Blink of an Eye.
Oh, yes. It's got a crazy cast. I know Rashida Jones and Kate McKinnon were cast in it. Like, it was the first two people cast in it.
Daveed Diggs is in it, too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's those three. I was like, who's the third one? Because there's like three. I wouldn't call any of those A-listers really, but they're no names, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, David is gonna blow up like in terms of popularity just this summer for being in The Little Mermaid.
It's a voice. It's a voice.
I mean, I know, but people are gonna associate it. It just is what it is. This is how it works with like these big studio movies. Like
You say that, but pop quiz: who did Ewan McGregor play in Beauty and the Beast?
He played. I only know this because I rewatched it recently.
Okay,
he played the candle character, and he had a French accent for some reason. I don't know why. All
right. Well then, let me do a different one. Let me give you a different one. Who played?
I didn't know that he played the candlestick. So there.
Which actor who appears in Tarantino's most recent film played Princess Aurora in both Maleficent movies? Had a featured role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Was it the guy that played Charles Manson?
Princess Aurora?
Well, I thought you like emphasized actor, and I thought you were gendering them.
No,
that
I was just saying. I was.
Is it Margot? Is it Margot Robbie?
Nope. Elle Fanning.
Oh, wait a minute. I remember seeing the marketing.
See, that's my point. It's like these movies, they don't. We'll see. We'll see about the V. I don't think it's going to help him that much personally, but we'll see.
Wait, Dakota was in...
Is it Dakota in...
Dakota Fanning's
Dakota
the one...
in Once
No,
Upon?
that's the one... Yeah, she's in Once Upon a Time.
Oh, my bad. My apologies, then, I guess. But if you'd said Dakota Fanning, I would have accepted it, too. You know, like... You
that's
know,
fair.
If you'd said a Fanning, I would have been like, okay. Now, one of you said that... I think, Mark, you said this was your first time rewatching it since something else? Or was it Gene you said that?
Gene, you've seen it a lot, haven't you?
I have seen it a lot, yeah. It was actually, funny enough, this was my partner and I's first Pixar movie together. Before then, I had seen it at least 8 or 7 different times. It's hard to count, because a lot of times, there were, like, times where I'd have recess and they'd put this movie, they'd pick, like, a random movie. Sometimes I'd watch Wall-E as a result of, it's raining outside, so everybody gather in the gym and watch a movie and whatnot.
We did forget to do our usual segment on this show where we talked about where we grew up with this movie.
Yeah, I saw it opening day, and I was so excited because I'm not going to lie, that teaser trailer is still one of my favorite trailers ever.
It's a great trailer.
Like, I didn't need to see another trailer, honestly. Like, that sold me alone.
One of the best examples from my childhood of a piece of marketing, like, not treating kids like they're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, such a good trailer. Crazy.
I remember that June, too, because I think the weekend it
July
came out.
was Dark Knight.
Yeah, July was Dark Knight, and I believe in June, I think this came out the same weekend as Wanted. I don't know if you remember
It did,
Wanted,
you're right. I never saw Wanted, but I know it came out the same weekend.
which also starred Chris Pratt, ironically.
I was actually arguing with someone about Chris Pratt earlier today. Not... Well, here's my defense of Chris Pratt. That isn't really defense of Chris Pratt. Is I sent a poll to my group chat. There's a punchline to this that I'm not going to give because it's not that funny and it will bring up stuff I don't want to talk about. But the beginning, I sent 3 polls. And the first poll I was like, okay. Because what brought it up was someone in my group chat, there are a bunch of people who love movies. One person in my group chat we're talking about The Gray Man, and if like someone should actually bother watching The Gray Man if they're voting on a category for worst films of last year. Because if it's nominated, should you watch it? Or should you just skip it because it's a bad movie and not bother doing your due diligence and watching every now and basically, okay? And then someone's like, The Gray Man is when I realized that Chris Evans really does suck. Like, he picks bad movies. And I was like, okay, here's an interesting question. Which Chris is the worst, parentheses, but you have to ignore, like, personal aspects of them. You just have to go off the roles they pick. Because in that regard...
That's
Mark.
The best choice. No,
that wasn't an option.
You just said
that was an option.
Chris.
Rock wasn't an option.
One. That's the best.
No, it's a poll. Obviously, the options were Pratt, Pine, Hemsworth, Evans, because those are the 4 Hollywood Chris's. Because I would say that in no way is Pratt the worst, if you judge it that way. No way is Pratt the worst, because Pratt has so many good roles mixed with his bad ones.
It's weird.
Although Mark might say he's the worst because Mark doesn't like Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's Evans, Hemsworth, Pratt, Pine. Because I think personally... Here's the thing. I think in a way, even though I wouldn't say overall he's the worst, I do think Evans is the most disappointing. Because I think Evans post-Marvel has only been picking really, like, lame projects. Other than Knives Out, which was immediately post-Marvel. Every other project he's done since then has just kind of been like... You kidding me, man? Like, you really couldn't find anything else to be in?
His agent basically booked him the Captain America job, and he didn't have to deal with getting jobs after that. And he was like,
when he was Captain America, he did Snowpiercer. But he did Snowpiercer when he was Captain America, and that was a good role.
I know, but
Well, I think, I don't know if I fully agree with all of this, but I do think that if you were like the face of a gigantic, I don't want to say the biggest franchise. I'm trying to like really emphasize gigantic franchise. Maybe you don't want to like work with every artsy director, and certainly sometimes you do, but I feel like before he was doing Marvel, he was really choosing a wide variety of things. But that's my point, is he's not picking a wide variety of things now. And that's very disappointing to me. Why not?
I would have thought post-Marvel he would have done some interesting stuff. And I'm not even saying artsy stuff. I'm saying all right, I'm opening up his filmography, okay? All right. Okay.
I just think it's valid to, Gene, as you said, like, you get the nut, and then
the only thing
enjoy the
to
nut.
me that he did that's been interesting since Avengers is being in Lobby Hero on Broadway, which is right after he wrapped, Endgame, Infinity. Actually, I think it might have been in between Infinity War and Endgame. He did a Netflix movie where he played a Mossad agent, which is like, okay, called the Red Sea Diving Resort. He did Knives Out. He did an Apple TV Plus miniseries called Defending Jacob. He has a cameo in Don't Look Up. He was in The Gray Man in Lightyear. And then he's going to be in this really bad-looking...
Ghosted, right?
Rom-com from Apple TV Plus called Ghosted. And then he's also going to be in Red One, which is the Dwayne Johnson movie where Dwayne Johnson is an elf and J.K. Simmons is Santa Claus.
Cool.
And his art house project, Mark, is going to be directed by David Yates. That's his next art house project. Do you know who David Yates is?
He's of Harry Potter fame, isn't he?
Well, sometimes, get your nut, man. Are people going to go to these films and enjoy them?
But if you were going to get a nut, wouldn't you want to get like a good nut? Wouldn't you at least want to go for the I, Tonya director if you're going to get like
I don't know his mind.
Hey, Danny, listen. I got to just be honest with you. Like, times are tough. And, like for Chris, maybe he's just picking whatever can put food on the table.
A lot of Chris's in the world, apparently.
But even but here's my point. Like, Chris Pine, right? Famously kind of picks some rough roles recently. He was in Don't Worry, Darling, Wrinkle in Time. Both those movies look good on paper, though. Right? And obviously he was back in Wonder Woman 2, which
I
very
was going to say, I feel like I disagree. I feel like he chooses really interesting roles.
And even his movie right now, which in my opinion hasn't been marketed well, even though I haven't seen it yet, the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which is a new blockbuster, it's by the people who make Game Night, which was good. If you're going to pick these studio guys, you should pick the good studio guys like Chris Pine is.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was my whole thing, is like people want to go after Pratt for his roles just because they don't like Jurassic World. I actually think Pratt picks good roles for the most part. And Mario. Mario's a rough one too, but I think Pratt has been very lucky with the roles he gets. in a lot of ways. I think Pratt usually is like one of the better parts of projects he's in, and it gets me mad because I don't like him as a person.
It's weird because there's the two parts of Chris. There's Parks and Recs, like he did the comedy Everyday Man. The Lego Movie I would associate with that in a lot of ways too, like that whole perspective of he's an everyday man.
I even think Guardians kind of goes that way too.
Guardians.
I think Guardians is that like as an
many ways. And then Hollywood tried to construct him as an action superhero basically in all his movies, which just was not really like it just feels like a weird change because he never really was that. He was always the goofy everyday man, right?
He really should be doing something like how J-Law's in doing that R-rated comedy this summer. Chris Pratt needs to do something like that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not really here for Chris Pratt like making good career choices, but you know what I mean.
It doesn't matter because like once Guardians is over, he's getting locked up to do those Mario movies for at least the next 10 years. So
he's got a nice paycheck. He'll have a nice paycheck coming.
Oh, he'll have a damn good paycheck.
Mark, where did you first encounter Wall-E?
Wall-E, I have no memory.
Never near you answered that.
Well, I kind of blew past it because I don't remember. I watched it once and then never again.
I saw it probably opening weekend as well. Liked it at the time because big sci-fi kid here, but like all these Pixar movies, I got the DVD at Christmas. This was a very big deal. The DVD I got. Do you want to know why? I don't have it anymore. I lost it. That's why I bought the Criterion, as I said. But because this was the first DVD that was packaged with Blu-ray, you couldn't buy the DVD by itself. You had to buy it with a Blu-ray, and I didn't have a Blu-ray player yet. I didn't get a Blu-ray player till the Up. I got Up on Blu-ray, and that's when I had a Blu-ray player. I do think this is kind of like the cutoff point, though, when I really was diving into the Pixar bonus features, though. Because before this, I have very strong memories of watching even Your Friend the Rat, but then even definitely stronger on like Cars and Incredibles bonus features. Wall-E, I think maybe I watched Bernie once, like way, like maybe like in 2015, 2014, I don't know when. And then for Up, when we get to Up, I saw one of those shorts online because I originally released it as a YouTube video. So I was like, okay, cool, it's a YouTube video. And then I've never seen the Up bonus feature short about Doug. I've never seen it. But anyway, I had that DVD. It was packaged really. I was actually looking for it because I was gonna put it in my. I thought I had it because I lost I have the DVD, but I lost the Blu-ray. That's why I was looking for just the packaging, but packaging was really bad. It was like a cardboard sleeve to be eco-friendly, which great, I love it, but maybe you should make something that can hold your fucking movie. But then because of that Blu-ray case sucking, it was like Ratatouille. Again, also Mark, you're aware of this. I did this project in 2018 where I was trying to rewatch every Pixar movie, and I got cut off at Ratatouille, and so I didn't get to Wall-E and Up and all those. So I didn't rewatch Wall-E until during the pandemic. Me and a bunch of my online friends, we were doing this Disney Plus movie night where we do these group watches of Disney Plus movies together and chat during them. Now, during Wall-E, because it was my first revisit in 10 years-ish, I put my phone away. I was like, I will get on and talk to you guys when the movie's paused, but I'm not going to be on here while I'm watching this because I haven't seen this in years. And the thing about that watch, I remember going into it, I kind of... I'm going to compare it to Avatar again, but I do think Avatar is the big comparison point of this. Is famously on my Letterboxd, I had a 3-star review of Avatar 1 where it said, Avatar, really overrated, logged 2010. And then I rewatched it in the lead up to Avatar 2 in the re-release, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, that was an embarrassing take. And Wall-E's kind of like that too, where I kind of let the internet get to my thoughts on it. Where I was like, Wall-E's got a really great first 30 minutes, but once it leaves Earth, ooh, it's not that great anymore. And then I watch it again, and I'm like, oh no, that's just what the internet told me when I didn't bother rewatching these movies at the time where I really solidified my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. So that the last watch was really, really good. And then, I rewatched it obviously for this too. On my Criterion. Where I haven't read the, I was going to say a good bet on this podcast would be if we want to make it longer is I could just read out loud the essay and we could have a contraband copy of the Criterion essay recorded. But I don't want to do that. So it's not. Actually, do you guys want to look at the packaging though? Because obviously...
Bring it back.
I will describe it, obviously.
Do an unboxing audio.
I don't need to describe the actual cover of it because you can find that online. There's this side of it that has the description of the bonus features, but who cares about that? Again, you can find that online. it pulls out like this, and it's a steelbook kind, not steelbook, it's made of cardboard stuff, of like the interior of Wally's house type of thing. Yeah, his
home
like, stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can see like you can see bowling pins, you can see the famous spoon, fork, spork. Which, fun fact, that's how I learned about non-binary people in college for the first time. I had been so sheltered I'd never learned about before, and then Walter Metz made us read an essay about Wally and the being non-binary and how the spork represented that, whatever, classic Walter Metz, like, okay, but also a cool way to be introduced to that concept in a way.
I did not know that at all. That's my first time hearing that. Ooh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. But then it's also got like Wally's spare eyes. It's got the Luxo Jr. Ball up in the corner. And some by and large stuff. Yeah. Then on the inside, there's the essay, of course, which is labeled trash. Whoa, wait, actually, what is this? Holy shit, wait, that's not an essay. What is it? Oh, okay, it has an essay, but then selections from the sketchbook, script notes, drawings, and artwork. So the essay's at the very beginning. It's like that. It's titled, wow. It's got credits written into, which is kind of cool. It's got this cool sketch of Wally the Boombox. No, but it's labeled Trash Pine, which I guess must have been the original pitch for it. Mm-hmm. I've got to look through this later on my own time. It's kind of cool looking. Look, they've got like a notebook thing here.
Aww.
And then this sketch on the back of Wally. But then what I was going to show you guys is in the interior, which the background is just, the shot of the giant trash that appears like right before the Wally logo does. But then the DVDs, or rather Blu-rays and 4K, have the by and large logo on them. Like that. Oh, you can't see it. Sorry.
I was like, right.
There you go. I was like, I'm like holding it way below my camera. But yeah. But that's the packaging on the Wally Criterion. Listeners, you'll just have to pick it up yourself. I will say, people are mad about like the Criterion snobs, which I'll admit I'm one of them, are a little mad that it got entered into the collection. But one, if it had to be a Pixar Disney movie, it should be this one, really. And two, this is a very affordable for Criterion thing, because it's a 4K that I think costs the same as their Blu-rays, or if it costs more, it's like $5 more. It's not like a significant markup. And it comes with the 4K and the Blu-ray, so I think to me that's a good deal. You can't buy just the Blu-ray. You have to get it as a combo pack, and it's only like $5 more. So to me, it's like, yeah, sure, like, whatever. To me, this is as affordable as probably Disney's current 4K was, so, like, might as well get a better packaging out of it.
And everyone will buy it, and I would love for them to have more, like, really obscure animation, but it seems like a smart thing to add. I feel like in their monthly releases, they've been, like, re-releasing a lot of old titles, and this was an exciting semi-contemporary thing.
Did you hear about the Petite Maman Criterion? Did I send you that?
I don't think you sent me anything about it.
So they're releasing Petite Maman next month, which I love. I don't know. Have you seen Petite Maman Eye Review? It's on Hulu. That's why I'm saying, like, you should watch Petite Maman if you haven't. It's 72 minutes. I would call it my favorite Celine Sciamma movie. That would imply I've seen more than Petite Maman and Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I haven't. But it's really great. I'm going to pick up the Criterion, but the reason I bring this up, it is related, is because they announced recently on Twitter that Criterion will include, air quotes, as a bonus feature, My Life as a Zucchini, the Celine Sciamma, which she co-directed, I think, so I guess I've seen 3 Celine Sciamma movies, but she co-wrote that too. It will include the entire thing as a bonus feature. And I'm kind of like, My Life as a Zucchini probably should be, like, the title movie with Petite Maman as the bonus feature, because... Well, it's older. That's always my opinion. It's like, if the movie is older... Oh, she only co-wrote the script of My Life as a Zucchini. But also, if you haven't seen My Life, that's another really good movie.
What is that?
It's a stop-motion movie. That's why I brought... It's an animated movie that's entering the Criterion Collection. I was like... it's based off an autobiography about kids in a foster home.
Gotcha.
Who, like, are recovering from abuse. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very good, very emotional. It's only 65 minutes, so it's shorter than Petite Maman, which I believe is like 72 minutes, but both really nice, solid, short movies. Definitely got to pick up that Criterion when it's out. I'm very excited for it, because I would love to have both of those on Blu-ray. But anyway, the big thing that I have watched between my 2020 watch of this movie and today's watch of this movie is last summer, at the Music Box Theater, at their 70mm film festival, they had a one-off showing of Hello, Dolly. Which I don't know if Mark told me he might watch it today. I don't know if he actually did.
I tried to
Did you?
start a bit of it, but I didn't get very far before we had to come on.
Well, first off, even also since 2020, because I saw it post-pandemic. Oh wait, no, I saw it pre-pandemic. I saw a stage show of this in I think 2019 of Hello Dolly. But I think it's very important to see the movie of Hello Dolly. Because, not important. Obviously, this movie, it's kind of like that joke I made about Fred Willard, but it's true. This movie will be Hello Dolly's legacy. Probably even as a total property. Even as someone who likes the stage show, I do think this movie kind of is what Hello Dolly... This movie will be remembered longer than Hello Dolly will be remembered. Even as a stage show, in my opinion. Mark says to give me a face that says
I think the stage show will last a long time.
I think it will last a long time. I think WALL-E will outlast it.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that were introduced to Hello Dolly through WALL-E.
Yeah.
But
I would say that.
What I think is so fascinating about it, and maybe I should have got a quote from it, because I know Andrew Stanton's been asked about it multiple times, why Hello Dolly? Because it is a big, what? It's the weirdest, in a way, on paper, this movie has a lot of, weird, big swings. I think the Hello Dolly stuff is by far, the biggest, what? Hello Dolly's role, having seen Hello Dolly, it's a bad movie. And I like the stage show. It is not a good movie in my opinion. And it is famously the movie that killed movie musicals. Because it was such a big bomb at the box office. But I think in a lot of ways, it's really, it ties into the themes well. And I don't think the Stanton said this. I think WALL-E lasts 700 years, 600 years really, on his own, being a trash robot that no one thinks about. The idea that the one piece of art, because it really is the only art, even counting paintings, drawings, stuff like that.
Sure.
It is the one piece of art we see that survives all this time, is this shitty musical that puts the entire plot of this movie into motion. And I've seen Hello Dolly, both the movie and on stage, and I think I only get a chill when I got a chill both times I saw it. I have a version when it only takes a moment began, but it's not because of the song in the show, because the song in the show and in the movie is not actually sincere. It's a bit of a joke thing, because it's the whole joke is well, people say it takes a while to fall in love, doesn't it? How about, does it take an hour? No. Does it take a minute? No. Does it take a second? Not even that. It only takes a moment. That's how it kind of gets, it's a joke. But you get chills watching Hello Dolly having seen WALL-E, because WALL-E gives so much meaning to that song and put on your Sunday clothes. And I think this is probably why that professor we mentioned earlier in this episode loves WALL-E so much in a way, because his big thing was talking about how movies interact with other movies. And I think WALL-E and how it interacts with Hello Dolly elevates both movies to even higher heights. More so Hello Dolly, because Hello Dolly is not a good movie. But yeah, I think talking about how Hello Dolly, and just also the idea of a robot watching a musical, not even that, but the idea of this big musical element being what he finds, what is romance? He learns it from this shitty whole musical. I think it's beautiful in a lot of ways. The idea that I was gonna say bad art lasts, which means in that regard, Hello Dolly will, no, I'm kidding, I like Hello Dolly. I like the stage show Hello Dolly. But, I don't know. I just think it's a whole interesting aspect to the film. Even if you haven't seen Hello Dolly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because, that's the only real media you see. And that's why he's so broken up when Eve starts destroying his VHS and everything. And he's like, ooh, wait a minute.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that.
He's like, wait a minute. I only have one of those. I can't go to Buy and Large? I can't go to B&L and get a new copy.
B&L is just a giant warehouse of VHSs. That would leave the movie in 2008. A giant wall of VHSs.
There's just a giant wall of then WALL-E just goes whenever he breaks it inadvertently. He's like, oh, just gotta go to the B&L and grab a new copy.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of music in the movie, I noticed that it was Thomas Newman once again, but unlike in Finding Nemo, I think that I noticed the score less, but that doesn't mean it wasn't effective. I just wasn't picking it out like I was in Scenes in Finding Nemo. I did have fun this time catching every time that they quoted the Hello Dolly music.
I think the score is very, I'm just going to say it. Even though I think Finding Nemo is a better score, this is the type of score that should sweep every awards at the end of the year. because this movie is just robot noises and the score for a solid half of it. And the score does so much heavy lifting on the emotions. It's really Thomas Newman's score. There's the sound work by Ben Burtt and Alyssa Knight. And there's, of course, the real star here, like of every Pixar movie, the animation, which cannot be understated how good it is. But I think it is really all three of those working in tandem. And even though this doesn't really have recognizable themes like Nemo does, there's still a love theme. You wouldn't be able to hum it because that's just not Thomas Newman's style. And I do think the music of this movie does so much to make it beautiful. Especially in that first 30 minutes and the dancing sequence. Like the defined dancing sequence. Because that is the signature track from this movie, is defined dancing. But I do think it's a really great score, even if you don't, and I'd say that not noticing it is part of why it's great. Because it's kind of like people who say, sure, and maybe you guys disagree with me on this, but I know a lot of people who say Dunkirk was one of Hans Zimmer's greatest works recently, besides, just outside of like Interstellar. But but to me, I've never been able to single out the Dunkirk score. Same with Tenet with Ludwig Göransson. People are like, Ludwig Göransson's work on Tenet was so great. I'm like, I can't single that out because the way Nolan uses score now is just so integrated with his sound design in general that it just is like, if the whole movie sounds good, then I'm like, yeah, should have score. And I think that's how Thomas Newman's score is used here. Mm-hmm. It's very prevalent, but you're not going to be able to really, because it's just part of the whole story, which is really what a good score should be aiming.
Yeah.
Slumdog Millionaire won everything this year. No. If you're curious.
Yeah, I checked, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, okay.
Because I also think the Peter Gabriel song is really great.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so beautiful.
You can't turn off the... No. I was saying this last week because, fun fact, Gene, you might not be aware of, the director of the short film Your Friend the Rat directed the credits sequence of this, which I said last week is probably one of the greatest credit sequences of all time.
Yeah.
Which, having rewatched the movie... Stick by that. It is one of the great, but it's not, even once that sequence is over, you still leave the movie playing until the Peter Gabriel song is done. I can't turn it off before that Peter Gabriel song is done. It's such a good song. And it really is a perfect come down from what you just watched.
Yeah. Especially that emotion, all that emotion that they give you in the last few minutes of the film. I would agree with both of you on the score just being so effective. Like Danny, like you're saying, you don't really notice it until the real key moments of the emotion. You're like, oh my god, the score is bringing a lot of emotion and brevity to basically robots that are trying to figure out what the heck is romance, if you will, during most of this whole movie. God, I still can't get over Wally's little recorder, his playback recorder thing on his, I guess would that be his chest, or whatever that.
Oh, you mean the diegetic sound?
That's a diegetic sound. Yeah. Just those little bits and pieces. It just
this movie. It's so good at quietly setting up Chekhov's guns that you don't they're just such a part of the movie that you don't even realize it, because obviously the playback is there so that way you can get the Hello Dolly throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. But what it's really there for is for the final gut punch of the recording being erased at the end. That's what it's really there for, is to punch you in the gut at the end. Yeah. Much like the other thing I noticed this time that I never noticed before in this movie is that Wally plays with a fire extinguisher on Earth, which is, so important later on in the movie. Mm-hmm. When he uses it to get out of the ship, which is so smart. And it's just very economic storytelling. In a way, calling it economic storytelling to me is being so cold to it too, because it's brilliant. It is brilliant. And I know, on this podcast all the time, I'll be like, this Pixar movie is brilliant. But I do think WALL-E stands out as, of course, we've been saying yes, the people who say the first 30 minutes of the best part are kind of right, but that doesn't mean the rest of the movie isn't also it's if those first 30 minutes are 100%, the remaining is 96, 97% great, that's the grade you'd give it.
For me, at least, Pixar is basically, since WALL-E and Up, they've really tried to chase that high of creating those really emotional impact, whether it's in the beginning or the end. I've seen it countless times in both Toy Story 3 and 4, and hell, I even saw in Lightyear last year. Technically, they flat out just rip off Up. But no, yeah, like
the funny thing is that we'll do an entire episode on Lightyear. But the thing that's so funny about that sequence is the thing that's so funny about that sequence in Lightyear, because I will address it, because obviously you're not going to come on for a Lightyear episode unless you really want to, which I doubt.
No, I feel like I'll be the one person who, I didn't think it was that bad.
Well, I was going to say that sequence is like simultaneously the only sequence that really works in the movie, and also the biggest sequence where I'm like, why the fuck they think this was a good idea for a Buzz Lightyear movie to have this?
It does feel jarring, because you're like,
yeah,
I'm crying, but
it's still like the best sequence of the movie. It's like, sorry, yeah.
I would agree, like, with your take on WALL-E in that, like, yes, while the first 30 minutes should be, absolutely praised for, first of all, just for a major studio to have the guts to put this out with, it's not an existing, I mean, obviously it's made by Pixar and Disney, so it wasn't like, it had a safe landing, if you will, if it quote unquote failed, but it's a brand new IP. It's mostly like hard sci-fi and everything, and the fact that they had the courage to put this out there and make it with all the war, like, because this movie is all about like melding, like, it's like this Japanese art thing that they build broken bowls with class and everything, and the imperfections are what makes it beautiful, which is what sums up this movie pretty damn well. Because, like, obviously you have Eve, this perfect robot perfect robot, and you have WALL-E, the worn robot, and just I feel like I'm doing just this movie like a disservice by using all these simpleton terms, but
it's why it's good though. In a way,
yeah.
It's like it's you can sum this movie up so simply, but it's so beautifully perfect in how it expresses itself.
I also didn't even. I know I mentioned earlier that it's an hour and 36. When I rewatched it, I was like, I didn't even realize it was that short. I thought it was like 2 hours.
It feels so epic. It feels so epic. It's something you said cued this memory in me, which is, and it's not really related to WALL-E, but it is related to what you were saying about WALL-E. Because it happened, I think, around the time Up came out, maybe Toy Story 3, but I think it was Up. I went to an open house, which apparently is a Midwest thing, because I've said this before on this podcast, or maybe an Indiana thing, because I've said this before on this podcast, and people have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? So, an open house is like a graduation party for a high schooler in Indiana, I guess. I don't know if that's like a thing other people call it.
I've heard it used for other things, but go ahead.
Well, I went to an open house of someone who was at my church, and this was like 2009, so I was like, probably 13, because it was, beginning of the summer. I have a July birthday. And I remember Up had just come out. I think we might have literally been either going to Up right after the open house, or just came from Up like the day before. And we were talking to the guy who's kind of like me, obviously way older than me. If I'm 14, this was when he was graduating high school. 13, sorry. I was 13, he was graduating high school. Hold on, I can do this math really quickly. He's 6 years older than me. So not that much older than me now, but now that when you're a kid, that's such a big difference, But anyway, I remember saying we're going to go see Up, and my dad and him got in a conversation about Pixar, because he's kind of, like me, kind of a movie geek. And even back then, the conversation was about like, yo, Up is crazy. This is a movie about an 80-year-old man, and it's for kids, and it's like, why would kids want to watch this? And I remember at the time, this guy who was in high school making the point, it's like, what Pixar has now is they're not a franchise, or like, they're not like Pirates of the Caribbean or Spider-Man, but what they are is a brand. They are something that people will go see because it's a new Pixar movie. That it does not matter if the lead is a talking robot, or a rat that wants to cook, a silent robot, or a rat that wants to cook, or a 90-year-old man. People will go see this movie because they know that it's the new Pixar movie. Mm-hmm. Which, in a way, is, even though Toy Story 3 is good, Toy Story 3 and Cars 2 back-to-back remove the idea of Pixar being a brand of itself, where the franchise is that it's original.
Yeah.
Right? And we're only now getting to the point where, like, stuff like Inside Out and Coco are that Pixar, air quotes, brand, because they're the Pixar original, which makes them specialer than the Pixar sequels, in a way. Which is why when they come back with Lightyear, that's such a misunderstanding. I mean, we don't need to get into all this, really, but, I've had the take since Lightyear bombed the box. I was like, well, really, in retrospect, they should have come back with Turning Red. Not just because Turning Red's a better movie, but because Turning Red is a Pixar original, which is its own a brand that's stronger than Toy Story spinoff. And that's what Bob Chapek didn't understand. And honestly, in a way, Bob Iger didn't understand, because Bob Iger was also pushing the sequels, and since coming back has already said, we're doing Toy Story 5. People, they don't understand that a Pixar original is if it's a good-looking Pixar original, that's going to probably do better with the zeitgeist and with money. Because Inside Out was huge for Pixar, the first Inside Out. Coco was huge worldwide. In the US, it didn't do well because of racism, really. I mean, it did fine. It didn't do great.
It did pretty well, though, to be fair. I mean, it didn't it didn't explode. It didn't do
it hit expectations, but it exploded worldwide. That movie is huge. I think it's Pixar's biggest non-sequel worldwide, I'm pretty sure. And my favorite story about Coco, which I'm sure I'll drop in the Coco episode too, is that China has a ban on movies about the afterlife, but the censors saw Coco and were so emotionally moved by it that they're like, well, we'll waive it for this one. And then it made China was one of the biggest markets for Coco. It did so well there. It is an outlier of Pixar movies there. It did insanely big there. And not just because it was, let's go see the taboo movie. It's because, it's a great movie. And people saw it and were emotionally moved by it. Mm-hmm. Eve is good. We didn't really talk about her. She's good.
Eve is good.
She's great. Eve.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought she was great. Especially like you said, that moment where she's watching those memories and everything, and then the directive. She can choose the directive.
I think one thing to say about Eve, and saying this as a dude, I probably doesn't mean much coming from me, but for all the talk, people, when Finding Dory came out, were like, this is Pixar's first ever film led by a woman character that is not a princess. Which is true, of course. The movie's titled WALL-E, but I forget how much agency Eve gets on her own whenever I rewatch this. And then I watch it and I'm like, she's not the obviously the movie's WALL-E, because we spend 20 minutes with WALL-E before Eve even shows up. But once Eve shows up and she wakes up on the Axiom, I think she and WALL-E do kind of evenly share the film. Which, granted, is about halfway through the movie, but still, she has so much to herself, and she has, in a way, a more she has the arc here. WALL-E really doesn't have the arc here. WALL-E always cares about other people. Yeah. But Eve is the robot who learns from WALL-E. WALL-E doesn't learn anything from Eve. Everyone else learns from WALL-E, which makes it, I think that's what makes WALL-E such an interesting character too. WALL-E is like a Superman character. I said earlier a Jesus character, but he's an ideal Superman story. It's about other people learning from Superman, right? Or an ideal, really what I've seen about WALL-E, and this is true about both those movies, is WALL-E reminds me of Paddington. Because Paddington doesn't need an art.
Paddington doesn't need to learn. Paddington 1?
Either of them. Because I don't think Paddington ever really needs to learn anything in those movies. Who people learn are people around him.
Yeah. From him.
And that's what WALL-E is. But, so in that case, Eve is the actual, character that we see grow here. And to me, I said this time I felt like crying when she was looking over those tapes of WALL-E. Because I was like, this is such a beautifully done epiphany moment. Because every Pixar movie has that epiphany scene. Some of them have done better than others. This is definitely one of the better ones. Ratatouille was one of the worst ones. We talked about that in our Ratatouille episode. But even though we like Ratatouille otherwise, the epiphany scene is kind of rough. But, yeah. Because WALL-E doesn't have an epiphany scene. It's Eve.
That's actually one of the... Because I cried 3 times.
I was going to ask. I forgot to ask.
I haven't cried... I mean, I've cried during... I hate that, I'm more empathetic now, so I can't watch Pixar movies without crying. God damn it! Stop! The water would come out every time. And watching WALL-E, I knew I was probably going to cry at the end. And, when he's trying to lift the one green thing. But when Eve looks at all those memories and everything, God, bro, I just paused the movie. Damn it.
Mm-hmm. It's because I said this earlier, but there are so many moments in this movie where it reminds you they're robots and they just don't have concepts of basic human things that we have. Yeah. And seeing that moment where it's animated well, and the sound on it's well too, even though I think it's pretty silent for the most part, where you can just tell Eve is. There's so many moments of this movie where you can just infer what they're saying or thinking, and that's one where it's realizing. Why does this guy care? Why does this person care about me beyond my directive? And it's the beautiful realization that love exists. Just in general, love is something that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously, my life has changed quite a bit since I first saw it when I was a little kid. And now experiencing romance in many ways, there's also just as you get older in general, there's so much appreciation and value you find in WALL-E that you didn't find the first time. which I like how you said, Mark, like the first time you saw it, you're like, it was all right. And then you watched it and you're like, God, this is awesome and everything. Because, yeah, I feel like as a kid, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't really love it like the way I do now until I got like closer to high school. Because, you know, especially compared to some of the, like, not to say Monsters University is a bad movie, but like there was like a period of time where Pixar was like, all right,
they put out some mid stuff. We'll get to it. We'll get to some mid stuff. So,
but yeah,
and Planes, which isn't because I forgot to watch it.
I can't wait to listen to that episode. So one of my there's a hilarious movie review I love to watch whenever I'm in a really bad mood, and they talk about planes and just how much they despise that dust crowd.
I've never seen the Planes movies, and I'm not gonna. Mark, you're not embargoed on Planes because I'm not gonna watch it till we see it. But I think you're okay with not watching it till we cover it.
I have no desire to watch Planes. I thought John Carter had like neat monsters in it or something.
I feel like John Carter, I've heard so much like reevaluation and talk about how it's air quotes actually good that I'm curious because I feel like there probably are good aspects and probably some bad aspects.
We've all seen.
Whereas Planes just looks
bad.
That
scene that Andrew Stanton showed. I don't really believe it'll be good, but
I think it might have good stuff in it. My own thing about it is I'm pretty sure I like it more than Tomorrowland because I've seen Tomorrowland and Tomorrowland is not good.
But anyway,
in any regard.
Yeah, I cried every time. I cried every time that there was some kind of like moment they won anything. It was surprising. I don't think I've cried as much at any Pixar movie that we've watched so far.
This is the part where I admit that I actually did not cry on this watch, but it's because I watched this so late at night.
Good for you, Danny, a big strong man. You don't need to cry, do you?
I did say like the closest I got was the Eve scene. That was the moment where I was like hit so hard watching this. And then of course, obviously, I think you have to be like one of those I was about to say one of those assholes, but I'm gonna quote this is my aunt's take on Ratatouille. I'm gonna say it again, but you have to have like this level of take on WALL-E to have not cry that scene. Is my aunt's take on Ratatouille was she wanted to leave the theater like within the last 30 minutes because there were too many rats in the kitchen. Just like a fundamental refusing to engage with the premise. I feel like that is the only way you could not cry at the end of this movie and be like, you cannot get to the end of this movie having watched everything up to that point and just be like, they're just robots. They're just cartoon robots. Like, I can't fathom that.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's too much emotional stake at that point. Like, if you don't see that, then you're just a heartless human being, and I wish you a better life.
I only mentioned the credits offhand. We could talk about like the cool evolution of those credits because I do think the credits are, as I said last week, it's WALL-E and 22 Jump Street are like the two best credit sequences in modern cinema. Like,
Luca's pretty good too.
Oh yeah, Luca isn't. Well, Luca and Coco both kind of exist in that plane where I'm crying from the ending of the movie. That I'm glad the credits are there for me to like exist for a bit before I can like leave and turn it off.
I totally forgot about those credits. Honestly, like rewatching it, I was like, oh my god, they had a whole ass, like, you don't even need a sequel if they ever wanted to, because it's in the credits, quite frankly. You know,
the thing that's wonderful about those credits to me is, one, obviously it has such a clear idea behind it, right? It's like the evolution of art that's showing the future of humanity from where this movie ends. Such a well executed idea, ends beautifully with the reveal that the birds have somehow come back. There's so many shots in that credits that get me emotional weirdly. That was the other part too that was getting me almost cry, was the credits. Because one, the song is great. I already said the song is great. But there's like the moment where it's showing the robot helping them fish. And that was where, like, you know, my whole takeaway this time I already said was like the idea that humanity has created something that can save us, but we haven't actually realized it. Because that is because all the robots save us in this movie, other than Otto. But the thing is like, there's that shot, because I feel like you see so many things where like robots fuck over humanity. Robots like don't help out. And the fact that it just shows the simple activity of like learning how to fish again with this rope, like, because I think if I remember, it's like the hairdresser robot not following its directive, helping them fish. And I'm like, this is just, I find this really beautiful.
It's free will, baby. No, it's beautiful.
But the only issue with the credits is that they're too good. And by that I mean I never read the names.
wow.
I can't read the names during these credits.
That's also why Presto was such a good pairing, is because those credits are so visually overwhelming. I had to go back and rewatch those too.
Did you rewatch the WALL-E credits?
No, because I was pressed for time. But I did watch them all.
In the post-credit scene where he fixes the Luxo Junior lamp.
Oh, that's
did.
right.
It was, and he gives him a fluorescent bulb, which I thought was
I also
very
like
nice.
the 8-bit bit moment. Oh, speaking of the bulb, I love the little... It's just a bit, but I love how when Eve touches the light bulb, and Wally's just like... Like, there's so many... I could literally be here talking about, like, the first 30 minutes of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, this moment happened, this moment... I was talking about this movie at work, okay? And there's never been a Pixar movie like WALL-E that was so perfectly titled for sequels. Let me tell you how. WALL-E 2. W-A... Roman numeral 2, E. WALL-E 3. Wall 3. WALL-E 4. WALL-E, but you replace the A with a 4 that looks like an A. WALL-E 5. You make the V, the first part of WALL-E look like a Roman numeral V. And that's the part where I was like, alright, I gotta stop there. Because obviously the fourth one is the actual best answer.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, do we have any last final thoughts on Pixar? All right, and how the movie, how the movie relates to Pixar, how we feel about the studio.
I think, as I said earlier, it kind of transcends what a Pixar movie is as someone who's Pixar's biggest fan. And the moments where it reminds you it's a Pixar movie are by far the worst moments of the movie. But that said, not even just Pixar, I think this movie it's a game changer that was never really followed up for American animation. That something could be this radically different and yet so clearly inspired by other things, because before WALL-E there was no movie like WALL-E, and there hasn't been a movie like WALL-E since WALL-E. And in a way it makes me sad Pixar can't do it again, but in every way that makes this like one of their crowning jewels, if not the crowning jewel of the studio.
Here's my thing about WALL-E. Like I said, my top three in particular when it comes to Pixar, no specific order, is Coco, Toy Story 2, and WALL-E. And a lot of it is because I don't know how much of a struggle it was on Coco's set, but I feel like Toy Story 2 and WALL-E in particular, those movies, I know they had so much trouble in production. Like Toy Story 2, they nearly lost the movie, and it sounded like WALL-E, it took such a long time to be like, how do we get this garbage robot movie to the masses in a way that will satisfy everybody? And it's weird because it's like the movie's clearly cynical, but it's so brilliantly optimistic in its character. And you're right, Danny, in a lot of ways. Like, it's kind of sad that they haven't been able to duplicate this, but also I think it makes it stronger as a movie because they haven't been able to duplicate it. Because it's hard to do. Lightning doesn't strike twice. I don't care what Hollywood thinks. It doesn't. And this is one of those...
Well, WALL-E thinks when he gets struck twice by lightning.
I just realized that. But no, absolutely. Like, it's one of its crowning achievements. And, like, I'm kind of glad that it's the only Pixar movie that is the criterion for it. Because it deserves it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like we talked about with Ratatouille. For me with Ratatouille's kind of outside of the Pixar ranking. It's like WALL-E is, like you said, Gene, it's like the crowning achievement of Pixar. It is hard to imagine they could come close to this again for a number of reasons, which is fine. It's just, any group of artists is going to have a big one. But then, like we talked about, it seems like Pixar kind of abandoned their brand name. This was an interesting take you had, Danny. They abandoned their brand name to capitalize on the IPs. And it's kind of nice seeing WALL-E and maybe to a lesser extent Up taking advantage of the Pixar brand rather than known characters. Because I think around WALL-E or maybe Up is when I personally get off the Pixar train. So we're getting there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, after that is the two sequels. That kicks off the... Although Toy Story 3 is good, but, it's sequels.
Yeah, but definitely the perception of Toy Story 3 as being a sequel is part of why I started paying less attention to Pixar. So, we, like a lot of film reviewers, like to give movies things. A lot of film reviewers give a film a review, like a star count or something like that. We like to give the film like a present. It could be a physical object, it could be a performance, it could be an event, or an activity or just however the spirit moves you, Gene. And I know this is a weird thing to ask, so me and Danny, one of us, like to lead it off with something.
Sure.
And we encourage you to go very far out there. But today, I'm not going to go too far out there. I'm just going to say I would love to have like wide release of WALL-E. Let's have some director Q&As. I know it had the Criterion release. I would love to like watch this in a theater.
It is a big birthday for it this year.
Which one?
It is a big birthday. I think it's the 15th, right?
15th? Yeah.
Yeah, 15th.
Yeah.
It's a big birthday.
Yeah, so maybe this is a gift to me, but I would love to watch this in a theater again.
No, it's really a bummer that during although I know you were sheltering and not like me, where I was like going back to the movies pretty quickly with a mask in hand. But when they were doing all their Disney re-releases in fall 2020, it's really a shame they didn't do WALL-E or Ratatouille.
Right?
Like they really, or Up, they didn't do any of those. You know, like what I think we mentioned in our 2 episodes, all 3s are all kind of lumped together as like Pixar's great original run, because all 3 of them are such crazy ideas on paper that are all executed. We'll see about Up, because we haven't covered Up yet, but at least Ratatouille and WALL-E are executed as well as they can be, pretty much. To like almost transcendent levels. Anyway, it's a bummer they didn't show any of those 3 during that time. They only showed like Monsters Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think what else I saw of the Pixar ones. I think Monsters Inc. was really the only one. And Coco, which was nice. I did see Coco again, but
I once gave a film like a rock on an episode, Gene. If that gets your brain going.
I mean, like, for me, like, I want to give this movie a hug more than anything. Just, like, a big bear hug, like a solid bear hug. I want to know it's okay. Like,
yeah.
Like, just, like, because, like, I know, like, it's supposed to be optimistic in a cynical world, but, like, WALL-E is so cute for being a little trash monster. Like, I just, like, for real, that's what I would give this movie, the reassurance to know that you made a very valid and artful film, and I appreciate it.
this is weirdly, like, to me, this is one of the hardest things. Because to me, like, and Mark knows, I can usually, like, rattle off something to give pretty quickly. But what do you give something that's given so much? And not in the sense that's, like, Toy Story, where Toy Story obviously is giving me so much childhood memories, so many great moments where I cry, like Toy Story 2 specifically. I'm just using Toy Story as a franchise. But a movie like WALL-E is a movie that continues to give me new things whenever I revisit it, which is something really nothing else here has. Even Ratatouille, which I said I really adored and hadn't revisited in so long. WALL-E is a movie I watched 2 years ago, and I watched this time and had a completely different but still incredibly positive takeaway on. And in a way, the thing about WALL-E is that I would rather... I know I can't ask for it to give me something, but I would like to go my day every morning feeling like how I do after I finish WALL-E. At least start my day how I feel at the end of WALL-E, where I both feel kind of bittersweet, but very relieved and just kind of hopeful. In a way, maybe... Am I allowed to just say what someone else said? Because really, what I think WALL-E does... And Mark, I'm not going to exactly say it, but you're going to go off that same vein. But I think, as someone who works with kids... And as someone who, you know, has said on this podcast before about the recent Pixar run where these movies aren't getting theatrical runs, and Gene, you know this from being by me in person during this at points, I think it's a real damn shame that a movie like WALL-E can't come out today in theaters and, like, be a movie that kids really have strong memories with. And a movie I would compare it to, even though I think WALL-E's a much better film than it, is Soul. The fact that kids today don't have a memory of seeing Soul in a theater and, like, that being, like, a movie they're like, yeah, I like that, and coming back to years down the road and being like, holy shit about, you know?
Sure.
In a way, I would just, like, in my bracket I did at my job, WALL-E, I think, made it past the first round. So kids are still watching WALL-E, and kids are still liking WALL-E. Mm-hmm. But I think, because, like, what do you give a movie that has, like, what do you give the only Disney movie on Criterion, right? Like, this movie both gave a lot and already has a lot. It has a legacy cemented. It doesn't have a Best Picture nom, but it's the reason we have more Best Picture nominees now. That's how damn great it is. And that's, like, I would like to give it I would like to give it a re-release too, but I would like to give it a nationwide screening that everyone is invited to come see for free. I would like to have that be allowed. I would like for it I would like to. Sorry, Mark. I'm not trying to one up you.
Yeah,
it probably
you
sounds like
it. You just like gave a bigger gift.
But it's like I would like for this to be like me go to I'm forgetting that Millennium Park and they get a big ass IMAX screen showing and it's like anyone in Chicago is welcome to come to watch this movie with a 4K projector and somehow an IMAX sound system set up in the park. That's I have to give it something big, because what else could I give this to, like, cement its legacy for more, because the legacy's already been cemented for our generation and older generations for this movie. We need to, like, let's give it to the next one in a way that they'll never forget. Because that's what this movie deserves. Sorry, Mark, I did one up for you, but I related to my job.
No, it's fair, it's fair. Well, Gene, thank you so much for coming on. Zahoot.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you on.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. Danny, I know you've known I've been wanting to be on one of your podcasts for a while, and I'm very thankful that you and Mark would allow me to be here today to guest on one of my favorite movies ever, and I'm just glad we got to talk about WALL-E, guys. Like, I really appreciate all this. Like, thank you. So we're closing up. Do you want me to plug myself? Okay.
Yeah, plug yourself.
Okay, for sure. If you want to follow me on like Instagram or something, you can follow me on Instagram at Herb Jones, spelled Jonze. What I really want to plug is my partner's shop, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, my partner has an Etsy. She makes handcrafted earrings and jewelry, and her Instagram is ATGZ Handmade, and then the Etsy is called ATGZ Handmade. And Danny, if you want, I can like give you a link.
Yeah, you
yes,
should.
Please. We'll put that in our episode description.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, it would obviously nobody has to buy anything if they don't want to, but I would really appreciate it if you just
if you listen to this podcast. No, I'm kidding.
I will say, if you don't support, I'm not trying to guilt trip no one, but my partner's queer, so you're saying like I don't want to buy queer person stuff. Like, obviously, if anybody who listens to this podcast wants to hit me up, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I don't know how.
Don't go to that Thai restaurant by the hotel I was at in LA. I didn't like. No.
Oh no, you ordered soup and you thought you were getting like a big entree, and I was like, oh.
Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
Well, now
how do we end this?
Well, now what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna ask Danny. Do you want to tell us what we're doing next time?
Well, we go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, because right after WALL-E, the next Pixar thing was airing on Disney Channel and also in theaters with Bolt, which is that Pixar in the late 2000s, early 2010s put out a ton of fucking Mater shorts.
Oh.
We will not be doing every Mater. We're going to split these up. The way I've split up our Mater shorts are we're doing the entire year's release in an episode. So we'll do the 2008 ones next time. That's 4 short films about Mater's tall tales. There's a lot more where they came from, but we're going to do the first 4 next time.
Looking for the Ocean is produced by Mark Young and Danny Vincent. Our original artwork was done by Sarah Knopf, and each episode is edited by me.
If you'd like to be notified about new episodes, you can find us on Facebook at Looking for the Ocean A Pixar Journey, on Twitter at Pixar Journey, on Instagram at Looking for the Ocean Pod, and on our website, lookingfortheoceanpixar.podbean.com.
If you want to know what I'm up to, or find me on social media, you can head over to markyoungperformer.com.
And if you'd like to see all my takes on all the movies, you can find me on Letterboxd at Blankmans. If you'd like to hear me on another podcast, I also have The Snub Club, a podcast about film history. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.